I would now like to kick off with our keynote speaker, Mr. Steve Donegal. Mr. Steve, whilst you talk, you don't mind if we go back and listen to you. So I'd like to introduce you to Steve. He's the Business Manager, Digital Press, HP Imaging and Printing Group, Asia Pacific and Japan. So you can see he's got a lot of territory under his belt. Steve Donegal leads the Digital Press initiative in Asia Pacific. He's involved in strategic planning and executive sales and of sales growth and business excellence for the HP Indigo business. Steve has vast experience in leading sales and marketing activities at a regional level through both direct sales and channel distributors. Before taking the challenge as business manager in Asia Pacific, Steve was commercial development manager responsible for distributor channels for the Indigo division from 2002 to 2003. He was instrumental in planning and implementing worldwide sales strategies consisting of sales training, regional initiatives, and development of new distributor channels. In 1994, Steve started his career with Indigo as a senior sales executive in the UK. In 1997, he was promoted to UK sales manager of Indigo, and 3 years later he was appointed as the UK general manager of HP Indigo division. In this position, Steve contributed to the wider strategic and operational business of HP worldwide, developing new products and business innovations. I hand you over to Mr. Steve Donegal.
Doesn't sound like me. Associated with changing in industry. So I'd like to congratulate the Bombay Master Printers Association for 50 years of innovation, leadership, and excellent work. I think 50 years seems like a long time, but if you put it into context of printing, it's a very short time. In fact, the printing industry in our calculations is about 500 years old. And in fact, offset printing or lithographic printing is about 100 years old. And believe it or not, small little Indigo division from its original roots in Israel is 38 years old. And 15 years ago, we introduced the first digital offset printing technology, just 15 years ago. And we shook the industry, the printing industry, to its foundations. And that's only done through leadership, through people who are prepared to take risks, that want to show the world that world-class decision-making and innovative management actually makes a difference. Now, Benny Lander, who's a very good friend of mine, spent hundreds of millions of dollars on a passion against the advice of many industry leaders. Benny brought a technology to us that was, I think, 2 or 3 years ahead, or 2 or 3 generations ahead of its time. And I'm proud to be associated with it. I'm very proud and honoured to be able to present to you all today. I appreciate your attention. And I'll try not to bore you too much in the next hour that I have, but I want to share with you the HP Indigo perspective of what we consider to be the best of both worlds. So we've been talking about this for many, many years now. And it's taken time for it to really get the attention of the world. So without further ado, I'll just get into my session. But congratulations to the Bombay Master Printers Association for 50 years of excellent leadership. So I'm going to talk to you very quickly about Indigo at a glance, and then we're going to look at the market trends and a quick overview of how we see this business moving. And then we're going to look at what influence we've had on the offset business and how we're integrating offset technology and digital technology in a hybrid sense to enable us to produce more effectively and more, I suppose, relevantly to our customers. Then I'm going to give you some insights to some of the latest developments and innovations. I think I've misinterpreted my request for a pointer. Who's first? No, I can point it. Can you see this? I'm pointing at the screen. I'll try and manage without it, but I appreciate your patience. So just very quickly, Indigo at a glance. I apologise, to make the screen bigger here, it means I don't get a chance to see it in front of me, so I'm going to be turning my back to you quite often, so I apologise for that. So as Benny did say, this is everything that can become digital will become digital, and printing is no exception. I mean, that's a true word. And we've seen it from simple mobile phones, which they can become irritating when you're trying to grab the attention of a large audience, and they go on, from digital photography right the way through to the latest. That's better. Thank you very much. Shilpa's my coach, and yeah. So Benny had this dream that digital printing would become a key feature in the communications industry. We see the printing industry as the barometer of the world. When economies are going well, people advertise. When economies are going badly, people get smarter at advertising. And that all funnels into printing and effective communication, and that's the business that we're all in today. So what's our vision as a business? Well, we want to transform the print service providers from just analog printing to digital printers. We want to transform enterprise digital printing processes analog processes to digital processes. And our value proposition is the easy integration of disruptive digital technology into current offset production, where the environment increases efficiency and delivers higher margins. So, very, very clear messaging. So that's higher profitability, using digital offset colour, quickly we react. Okay? Giving the highest. Can you hear me? Yeah. Now I'm 2 mics and you can't hear me. How's that? Is that better? Okay. I'm sure they'll work it out as we go forward. So, essentially, this maker mechanism.
You can walk now.
Notice how the table cleared at the front here. I feel like a school teacher. So essentially, we want to deliver to the printing industry real benefits. Not just a technology looking for a place to live, but a technology that offers cost effectiveness, flexibility, opens up new business opportunities, and allows us to economically meet the needs of our customers. So, what are our solutions? Well, I think from our portfolio of products, we demonstrate a level of flexibility with what we call the liquid ink process that I think is unmatched in the world by any manufacturer today. So right the way through to our entry-level products, and this is really the showcase for Asia Pacific and Japan, particularly in India, where we have an entry-level strategy with our commercial printing presses, the 1050, right the way through to our production engine, our flagship, the 3050, in the commercial space. We also have very high-speed, web-based technology servicing what we call the transactional marketplace, as well as the 4050, which is our flagship industrial and packaging printing press. We also have to be very, very sensitive to the fact that if we have a dominant printing technology, we need to have the workflow solutions to enable the data to be presented in a timely and effective manner. And also the media and the ink quality, which is basically our leveler, that's what we're measured on to complement those elements as they go forward. But we don't do that alone as a manufacturer. And what's important here, just as with this association, you have partners that help and add value to your overall objectives, HP is no different. And we've introduced some of the finest partners for both front-end workflow solutions, applications that really add value and open up new opportunities, and also finishing solutions which give you a timely ability to finish short-run on-demand printing. And I think this is probably a little bit difficult to see, but this is again just an example of how radically digital printing has changed the industry. And again, from the manual processes that we saw in the early days, all the monochrome steps that you see here, to when pre-press had a huge impact on how artwork was produced, then we saw the conventional printing market react to the changing demands of the conventional printer, where we saw computer to plate offering real advantages for those companies that had multiple printing capability. And then we saw the digital introduction, where workflow basically went from multiple steps down to just 1 or 2 steps in the printing process. And that's how radical the change has been over the last 15 years. So we presented again at a massive show in Chicago called Print 05. Just a very quick snapshot. I mean, we as a business, when we launched back in 1993 at IPEX, were basically a new innovative company that had no voice in the printing industry. And over that time, we've worked very, very hard to make sure that our standards, our technology, the people that we partner with are the very best. And we've come a long, long way. And so our installed base from the early days, in fact, this is Print 01, just 4 years ago, has grown 600%. So we've come a long way. But what's more important is that our customers have gone even further. And we've seen print volumes increase 1,200% in the same 4 years. And that's good news for us, because if our customers are successful, we're successful. And there's a lot of room in this business for digital print providers, and most of those companies didn't even have digital on their mindset just 10 years ago. I just want to put the industry size into perspective. The commercial printing industry, or the printing industry as a whole, is around $800 billion. And we break that down into a $400 billion commercial printing industry, which is supported by a $300 billion packaging environment. And then you have speciality products. And I was talking to 1 or 2 of my colleagues here and partners about a special project which we have that's just starting in China, where the Chinese government, the military government there, because it's just moved from a communist state into a more democratic state, are now looking to give a very special ID card for every man, woman and child. That's about 1.3 billion people. And in my little business card holder, and I can't show you all, I have a sample of the product. Very simple. It's a 1 or 2 step process now, but every man, woman and child in China will have a new card which is digitally produced in an effective way economically across the whole of the nation. And that's 1.3 billion people. If India decide to do the same thing, that'll be 2.5 billion people. And it just gives you an example of how radically these applications happen because our technology enables it. Now, I just want to use one point. Electricity, for the sake of electricity, was not that exciting. But if you imagine now everything that works around electricity as an enabling technology, you'll soon see how easy it is for small innovations to have a radical impact on our lives. And printing, again, or digital imaging is the same. But what's important in this $800 billion is if we see the spread of where that revenue is distributed, 32% of it sits in Asia Pacific. So whilst I'll talk a little bit later about how the markets move, it's important to know that the lion's share of the revenue split over a lot of the bigger, more developed printing environments still sits here in Asia Pacific, which is really important. Now, it's fair to say that the printing industry of the major markets in Asia Pacific are not as well developed in terms of size compared to the US and Western Europe. However, if we look at the ratio of print spent as a proportion of GDP, it's actually similar across all of those countries that we've indicated here. Now, we haven't picked them all, we've just picked a selection of the ones that are actually growing. And if we overlay on that, we look at the growth opportunities of the future. So it's no surprise here that the fastest growing marketplace today is China. It's expected to grow nearly 100% between now, I think, and 2008. And India is expected to be the second fastest growing market at 47% between now and 2008. So it's no surprise that I'm standing here addressing this market today, and we're working very hard to be part of the innovative explosion of this booming economy. And it's very important to see that all the growth for the future sits in Asia, if we compare it to the growth estimations of the Europe and the USA. And just statistically here, I don't want to bore you with too many numbers. We look backwards from 2003 to 1998. We take Japan as an isolated market. Now, Japan, in fact, is 3 times bigger in size than the nearest market, China. However, its growth, looking forward between 2003 and 2008, is very small by comparison. But in terms of absolute size of market, it's one of the most important markets in Asia Pacific. Next in line, if we look at China, China has grown 52% since 1998 to 2003, and is tipped to grow around 100% between 2003 and 2008. Still, in terms of size, is only half the size of the Japanese market, but represents the biggest opportunity for change. So I've highlighted these green areas, and I don't want to miss India here, because India is also tipped to be one of the fastest growing markets. Now, what's important about India is the fact that culturally it has a fairly flexible compatibility with both the European culture as well as the Asian culture. The English language gives it advantages around the world, and our technology fits very nicely into that flexible culture. So again, for our benefit, these three markets will be the focus areas for the HP Indigo products moving forward. But I just want to put some context as to why you see many suppliers, ourselves included, scrambling to develop products that really have a meaningful position in the commercial printing market. Most companies today are looking at two things. One is to have a hardware platform which is flexible and gives the ability to offer value, but second is to capture high value pages, high productivity pages. And whilst I suppose I'm comforting myself that we don't see ourselves in what we consider to be the low-end market. And if you can't read this, it's probably better to see it on the other screens because of resolution. But I just want to make a point. I'm going to compare on the green line here low-end technology. So that's entry-level type printing devices such as the zero-graphic processes, and we can say the 6060, the 2060, for example, as a low-end device. And in that we can group our entry-level 1050 or 1000 as it was known. In terms of machines placed into the market, they outnumber the mid to high-end technologies by about 3 to 1. So for every one of our high-end machines, Series 2, there's about 3 or 4 of the mid to low-end technologies installed at the same time. So when we're looking at clamoring for market share, these things are all very important if you're looking at these key ratios. But what is startling is the page volumes are very different. In the low-end entry level, even though they're placing machines at the ratio of 3 to 1 compared to the mid to high end, the ratio of high value or high volume production pages is around 4 to 1. So on the mid to high end technologies, they're built for production. They're built for 24 hours, high speed, continuous printing at the very, very highest quality levels. And it's clear that the mid to low end products don't necessarily have the same position in the commercial printing market, which is used to this rate of production, day in, day out. And that trend is set to continue. So that's why a lot of our investment, billions of dollars, is spent on developing products that aren't for the mass market as such, but deliver very high quality, consistent, high volume pages. And that gap is set to continue. So one of the things that's very important here is that we don't drive this business as innovative manufacturers. The market does. And that sets the trends. And for not many people really appreciate how dramatic it is. In fact, I don't know if all of you know that about 78% of all printed jobs today are less than 5,000 in run length across all printing processes. That's less than 5,000. In fact, the turnaround times, that's what TAT stands for, is actually getting shorter. In fact, by 2010, it's predicted that 20% of all print jobs will be required in less than 24 hours. So if you combine the fact that run lengths are getting shorter, because the people who demand print want different things, and that the turnaround time, because product life cycles, time to market, become more critical, it puts pressure on the current printing processes. And if we just look at our installed base roughly, and this is a moving target, around 42% of our customers, that's either print around 1,000 run or below. But then the lion's share of our business actually comes up to even higher numbers around personalization, which is real added value, and combined with transactional type and direct mail type applications, 38% of our people are printing above 1,000. So the mix is different. And once upon a time, people looked at our technology and said the break-even point was around 1,500 pages and below. But that's not exactly true. So digital printing helps reverse the trend, if you want, of negative profitability. And I've just taken a cross-section here of jobs from a run rate of 250, and I've not discriminated between xerographic pages or offset pages, up to the super high run 50,000. So in the top area, the red, this is the trend of decreasing frequency of these jobs. In this section here, there's no decrease or increase. But in the blue area, this is where the digital transformation is having the most impact. And it just happens to be in this area here, where it is today, between around 4,000 pages and 250 pages, where most of the digital growth is taking place, against a reduction in the super high run pages in the offset market. And I think the challenge for a lot of commercial printers in the future is to just have a customer base that only want to print the same thing over and over again. And this is where we look at the best of both worlds being an important point to make around the introduction of digital. So out of the companies that we identify as our sweet spot, that's the companies that have made the transition from conventional to digital. In fact, if we look at the cross-section of printing companies around the world, in fact, India is slightly different, and I'll point it out later, that have around 10 plus employees and turnover between $2 and $10 million a year and fit just that criteria. There's about 100,000 of those printers worldwide. And out of that 100,000, only 2% have made the jump to digital. And the ones that have made the jump to digital are basically investing in these three dominant technologies. That's the Nexpress from Kodak, the iGen 3, and we're looking at what we call the heavy-duty cycle machines. These are machines that have 1 million impressions per month without manual intervention from an engineer and so on. So it talks about our Series 2 engines. That's our 3050, 4050 engines. So it's clear if we look at the distribution of the investment in the 2%, that most of the marketplace see the commercial relevance to the Indigo processes against the other two who have strengths in other areas. And again, I want to make some comments to that later. But offset printing is still dominating. If we look at the split of offset duplicators, of say the small offset size, we can see that it represents around 70% of the installed base. If we look at just web offset, which is a declining production process in the commercial printing industry, again, it only represents a very small. But if we compare the whole mix of current printing technologies, and we see where the digital printing technology sits today, it's still only a tiny, tiny fraction of the printing technologies that are installed today worldwide. But it is declining. And it's hard to see on here, but this is just a US comparison. We're changing the US offset installed base between 1995 and 2002. Here we see a huge decline in jobs that are printed here on offset, large format offset, down to very small format offset. This is web printing. We can see that there is a massive decline. And it's only in the medium sheet-fed marketplace where the commercial printing industry is seeing new innovations, faster and faster, more efficient printing presses with proper digital workflows, where we see an increase in the conventional. But everywhere else is decreasing. And with that, I want to just make a quick commercial reference to one of the probably most widely respected printing manufacturers or press manufacturers in the world. This is Heidelberg. We have a great deal of respect for. And around this junction here, 2002, 2004, made the decision to de-invest in their web-fed division because of these trends. Now, if these things are spotted by the top, most reputable manufacturers in the world, as a consequence of the business trends, then we see that there was a very tactical move made by Heidelberg because their net sales over the last 4 years, especially in this division, were declining. But the sheet-fed division, which is their focus, remains their most profitable and high-margin segment and continues to perform that way. But that's just a trend and a tactical move or a strategic move made by one of the most reputable companies in the printing industry. And on this slide, I didn't want to get into too much of the detail, but I just wanted to show here how sheet-fed versus the web-fed business we see in terms of growth, and compare on top of that how digital printing is growing in relation. I can get rid of my cane.
So you're in digital world.
Yeah, now I've gone digital. So most companies today that are looking at positioning themselves beyond 2008 and 2008, sorry?
The stick wasn't too bad.
It should be, isn't it? Beyond, the reason why everybody's looking at 2008, we have a major show. We have the Drupa 2008, which is the real shop window on the printing industry, is where a lot of people focus their attention for the next generation, the generation after that of technologies. And what we want to be at Drupa 2008 is the dominant player in the digital offset market, and that's the complementary player to offset. And whilst we're seeing decline in certain conventional processes, we're seeing an increase in digital processes in relation to that offset. And just to give you, just ignore the numbers for the moment, but if we take from 1997 to 2002, we see only a 0.2 increase in the relative market for conventional printing. Copy centres and quick printing is relatively static in terms of volume spent on pages. All of the growth, in fact 99% of the growth, is coming from digital printing. So as a whole, without the digital introduction, the printing industry wouldn't be growing much. So it means there are a lot more companies, or fewer companies, chasing the same number of pages, if that relationship stays true. So when sort of industry analysts look at what you as printing companies will do in the future, they ask you very specific questions. And these independent bodies rank certain decision makers, and they compile, if they can, the next set of trends. And this is information that we as manufacturers find quite useful to know. So in terms of the top investments, in the past 5 years, only 21.6% of people asked, that's commercial printers that were asked, saw digital printing as relevant to their business. But looking to the next 5 years, just under 60% of the commercial printing market see digital as a relevant investment for them in the future. And Cap Ventures, again, are a very big investment or research company around the world, say that most of those investments are geared towards the high productivity engines that I made reference to earlier. This is where commercial printers will invest. They invest in high productivity, high speed, high quality printing presses. And this is what they're telling the marketplace they will be doing in the future. So it's no surprise that we see 3 or 4 very high value solutions being targeted at that market. And you can't really see this from the back there, and I apologise for the quality. But basically what it says is that when those same people were asked about which technologies they felt had the best growth potential for them, and they measured it against many, many manufacturers, I won't go into all of them, the Indigo technology, for the sake of its flexibility, was seen to be the best bet when commercial printers were questioned. And it's quite comforting to know that I'm involved in a technology which the printing marketplace sees as relevant to them. So, the transformation, that's what we describe it, is moving from a manufacturer-focused process to a service-orientated process. To survive, service providers will need to optimise their operations, expand their businesses with new value-added services that solve the customer's business problems. And those that remain will be the larger organisations or the more dominant or dynamic organisations that offer a wide range of services and have access to greater capital process equipment. So the impact of digital technologies is the trigger for the graphic arts industry to transform, because it impacts both manufacturing, it changes the way we distribute print, and it creates new opportunities for those companies that have a foundation in the printing industry today. So, I don't want to be too colourful in my approach here, but this is what we see as the migration of analogue pages. So in this curve here, we see analogue pages declining, and we see this analogue to digital conversion on the increase. And this just maps number of pages against time on the x-axis. So what's fueling some of those changes is new applications such as photo-related applications, and we've got some examples of those outside in the display. There's another application which didn't exist a year ago, and that's flight maps. I don't know if many of you are familiar with the organisation Jeppesen. They're a subsidiary of Boeing. Boeing are one of the largest aircraft manufacturers in the world, and they in fact have the monopoly, if you want, the market share, the world market share of producing the flight charts. All of the commercial pilots you see around the world carry around 16 to 20 kilograms of flight manuals, charts in their cockpit at any one time. And as they develop their rosters for any given week or any given month, they have to have the latest information on any airport that they have to fly into at any one given time. So it could be that there could be a runway change, there could be a radio frequency change, there could be obstacles or other noise abatement processes that they need to avoid. And that process, up until recently, was a very manual process where it was static pages that were picked and pulled from various pigeonholes, manually combined, and then sent out to the pilots with a great deal of waste. We've digitized that whole process for Jeppesen. And today, just in terms of saving, we save 60 tons of paper that was originally wasted every month. And we've now been able to open up new markets for the commercial and the maritime industry on the same processes. And one of the simple little things on these charts, by the way, because pilots are trained in all corners of the world, they have universal colours. So if there's, say, a terrain change, an elevation, say a mountain is 10,000 feet, then there's a special brown that indicates the height above sea level, which is not a colour that can be reproduced consistently using CMYK. So we developed this special brown and the shades of brown for these charts, and now they can have these charts in full colour. Even today, the old charts were black and white, now have a three-dimensional aerial picture of the airport that they're now flying into, which wasn't possible before, not economical. And then obviously personalisation. So to put that into context, you've got orange lines and blue lines. And the print buyers are demanding shorter run lengths, quicker turnaround times and lower prices, that's a given. So the orange line really looks at cost efficiency. That's taking costs out, building better workflows and producing things smarter. And the blue line represents new business opportunities, which demands higher automation, much better workflows, web-to-print applications and so on. And on this last slide, I want to show you how that all comes together. So we're seeing the decline in analog printing, the conversion from analog to digital, and we're also seeing these accelerators that really force more pages to become digitally printed. And we're working with partners such as AGFA, Heidelberg, Creo, to develop the workflows in order to accelerate that growth. And we're seeing also analog digital front-end solutions putting together hybrid workflows so we can have one workflow that allows you to produce both digitally and conventionally on the same workflow systems. So that's how it all ties together. So, again, from 500 run right the way up to 5,000 run, given that that's the sweet spot for digital printing today, we see this massive change. And the reason why it's changing is because we clearly position ourselves. The copier market, which is for the ultra-low run, has its clear position. And we see this is where we sit today in the digital offset process. But as our value proposition changes and the type of work changes, we push into this space here to make printing more viable in the longer and longer runs. And this is a trend that we see set to continue. So the reason why that's happening for us in the commercial printing space is because there are some inherent advantages. We have a quality that's unsurpassed. It's the look and feel of conventional printing. We have a speed advantage, being able to switch from 1 colour to 4 colour or even 7 colour, and actually have an incremental increase in the number of pages output through our printing presses, which again gives us a huge amount of flexibility when it comes to running production side by side with conventional. And our cost per page, and what we call TCO, our total cost of ownership, we believe is the best in the world. So our business, we believe, is an offset mindset, where we have a heavy metal printing engine, we have a blanket, which is synonymous with conventional printing, and we use liquid ink, which gives us the same flexibility on the same substrates that you see being used in the printing industry today. And in fact, I want to make a point that the samples that you see on the HP display are all printed on Indian papers that are local, no treatment required, and they're all locally sourced papers. And I think if you look at the results, I think they speak for themselves. So, zero waste, low service required, operator effectiveness, give us inherent advantages which, again, we're very, very proud of. So if we now sort of come back to the best of both worlds theme, analog plus digital, we think equals full compatibility. That's combining offset and digital printing, which was never easier before, because ink on paper is the same. The workflows we see now are consistent. The media range, as I mentioned before, are compatible. And the finishing solutions that we require in our presses are the same that are required in conventional presses. So Indigo enables commercial printers to use the same workflow for their conventional offset presses as for the digital offset presses. And this increases flexibility in production, in the production line, by delaying the decision as to where to print. In fact, it's safe to say that your customers aren't really interested in what you printed on, as long as they get the quality they want, as long as they get the product that they want. And we take the difficulty in that decision-making process away by giving you these attributes. Okay. So, again, enjoying the best of both worlds isn't just a saying, it's absolute fact. So from a conventional printing process, you have the long runs, and in the Indigo offset environment, you enjoy the short to medium run capability. Convention offers the static data capability for the long runs which exist. And we have the variable data capability in terms of speed. You print 10,000, 20, 30,000 pages an hour. We have very fast turnaround, so if you need something tomorrow, or you need it next day, or you need it next hour, then we have that turnaround time with flexibility. And we both share the common denominator of ink on paper. So we see the future as combining digital with conventional as being the compatibility for printers in the future. But it's not us. What are the big industry analysts saying? It's the only digital press with true ink on paper offset quality and up to 7 colours is the HP device. The results from the 5000 and the 3050, because we're just testing that product around the world, can easily be compared to that of offset. With colour consistency, this is the best result from any machine that they tested. And HP Indigo Press is the only one below the tolerance line for colour difference for the standard offset. Our inks are Euro standard inks, so when we look at the Pantone reference books, there's absolute match between our ink result and the ink results that you would see from a conventional printing. And in fact, what we are very, very keen to make sure you understand is that it's not the manufacturer that's saying that, it's the end users that are saying that. It's our customers that are using the press in parallel to conventional printers that are saying that. So, what's new? Well, at Print 05 in Chicago, and I'm not sure if many of you were present at Print 05 in Chicago, we introduced a new line of improved production engines for workflow and production management in the system here. So they allow you to have multiple engines using one RIP with multiple RIPs embedded, allowing automation, web-to-print connectivity, and high-quality color management. We also introduced some very sophisticated partners. Creo are one of the world leaders in digital workflow and production management, and now part of our product portfolio. Also, you have the freedom of choice now to have workflows which you're familiar with in your conventional work environment. And again, we've got a nice relationship now that's formed as part of our product line with Agfa. And we also have Heidelberg now as our portfolio provider for high-speed connectivity on the front end. And again, this is the hybrid approach that a lot of manufacturers are taking to complement both digital workflow and analog conventional workflows all in one company. And you haven't seen this press in India yet, but I don't think it will be long. This is our 3250, formerly known as the 3200, which is our web-fed, high-speed, 136 page per minute colour printing press, or in the two-colour mode, 272 pages per minute, which is introduced into the market with some very enhanced features. And I won't go into too much detail, but we have a new unwind system for feeding paper to the printing press, which complements what we call now an inline primer. Now, this inline primer allows any of its users to print on very, very light papers without any consideration for the process that was used in manufacturing. As I said, this particular engine is used for the very high speed, direct mail, what we call transactional processes, and we produce finished products with the Hunkler finishing line that are completely automated in super high volumes. And in terms of finishing solutions, many of you will know these names: Dawn in packaging, Horizon, Duplo, Hunkler, MBO. We're all now connected with the digital process. Companies that you will know because you have those finishing engines in your organisations have an intrinsic connection now to the digital printing processes and finishing lines of our products. And of course, helping our customers to expand their businesses is also important. So we just recently introduced a digital mat. It's almost like a spot varnish type product, and we've got some examples here, I think, shortcut that we will see today and see tomorrow, which enables us to have a very high-class finish on various printing examples. And I suggest you have a good look outside because it really does make a big difference. Three-dimensional lenticular screening now is available digitally on our printing presses, and I'm sure we've got some examples of some very sophisticated lenticular, great opportunity to grow your business. Now a seamless workflow on the S2000, and also Pantone emulation, where you can have safe ICC profiling of colour matching on press 100% of the time. And these are what we call business enhancing innovations. So what do we stand for as a business? Complete end-to-end solutions. Today it's not just about delivering you a box and say there's a printing press, go and do something with it. It has to come with a complete workflow. It has to come with applications that complement your business and your printing processes. The services and the business development efforts of those manufacturers that you partner with have to complement your growth strategies in the future. And of course, any business today looks at the financing or the risk of entry as either a way to get in or a way to stay out. And again, we've worked very closely with our finance companies to make this transition as smooth and as risk-free as possible. So again, this is probably just the last hurdle, so if you're getting fed up with my voice, I don't have much more to add. But I just want to put some context to what it is that drives the market. So we see the enterprises, that's the big organisations, who demand print as being the fuel, if you want, of the system. And the agencies enable their ideas into printable, creative products. And the print service providers are the people that actually manufacture the end result of these individuals working together. And historically, the print service provider is at the end of the food chain. So by the time their print buyer, if Mr. Print Buyer happens to get to you first, has got the job, the determination of what gets printed and how much they want to have the job produced for is already made. So then you find a lot of printers clambering together to fight to quote for this job, and that's really the way the process works. But our technology is making this whole process connect, so that we can give the enterprise the opportunity to produce collateral which gives them a much higher return on their investment. We give the agencies an opportunity to design more creatively for these companies, and we give the print service providers the opportunity to get a much closer, more loyal relationship, controlling the asset or the data of this whole process within their control. And this whole ecosystem is what's fueling the business, and there's some very interesting statistics of how direct mail, just as a simple example, has made a transformation in terms of the return on capital employed for some of these companies that want to target particular audiences. And I'll give you an example of the automotive business. Today, some of the best world brands such as BMW, Mercedes-Benz and Toyota are now employing digital printing to target specific segments of the population for particular products. When these guys develop a new model, billions of dollars go into designing it for a particular market segment. Up until recently, they've not been able to target those people. So one brochure, if you want, tends to go to everybody, whether they're a suitable customer or not. But today, BMW are leveraging digital production through agencies via print service providers to give much better return. And we have just a couple of companies here overseas, both in Europe and the US, that are particularly skilled and rely 100% on just variable data for the automotive industry in that context. And again, this is the product that you see. So if you visit a website, for example, for BMW, and you look at a particular brand, and you have a particular need for colour or specification, then next day, a beautiful printed product will arrive with everything that's relevant to you contained within it. And it gives you a reason and a call to action. Another innovation is that with Ford, by the way, their service documentation is related to the car you have, the mileage you do, and they know exactly when your finance agreement is just about to expire, so they can sell you a new car, or at least introduce you to another range, and they give you the whole financial breakdown in one transactional document that enables them to give you a much more targeted set of communications. And again, we don't have time to go into this, but I just want to around the Asia Pacific territory and in India, we've had tremendous success. I mentioned the China ID card project. This is the MPS, where we're digitizing 1.3 billion ID cards. That's a great opportunity. The China Post is particularly relevant because they produced very unique postage stamps, which are real tender, which are now variably printed with very unique messaging on them. Particularly important for Beijing in 2008, a lot of commemorative efforts are being made to really document this huge event for China. And the China Post control most of the postage stamp collateral in the world. Ruprascan, again, a very famous company in India, one of the prestigious and proud to be associated with them. They're here today. So congratulations, doing some fantastic work. Links in India, again, a very unique little business. Tag manufacturing. And one of the interesting things about Links is that they use our printing press just to print with spot colours. Yeah, their work doesn't revolve around cyan, magenta, yellow and black, it revolves around special spot colours. And that's again given an idea of the unique flexibility between being able to print using standard CMYK and shifting to spot colours, but still enabling you to have that digital benefit. Mayor Services, again in India, tremendous company, fantastic work, very, very innovative company. And again, we've got Indonesia, Australia, Thailand, again, exquisite print also. They're based in Pune, yeah, and they'll be here tomorrow. Yeah. So you'll get a chance to hear their experience as one of the pioneering companies, in fact, the first company to install a digital press from HP Indigo into India. There's also Print 7C, Iris, and Indigo Digital Print in India. And the list...
Yeah, just as an example, Print 7C has a very good success in the automotive industry. When you saw examples that Steve gave of something that's happening in Europe, but they've had a tremendous success with one of the car manufacturers in India doing direct mail and have had 40% ROI on that mail. So it's happening in India as well with the digital press.
So great work. And I really want to congratulate the team that I have here in India and our partners and customers. We're really doing a great job of introducing our technology into India because I think it's going to be one of the biggest and most exciting markets in the world. So some of the key takeaways. The only future for commercial printers is to add digital printing capabilities. They can't survive long term with just conventional capabilities.
In India as well with the digital press.
So great work. And I really want to congratulate the team that I have here in India and our partners and customers. We're really doing a great job of introducing our technology into India because I think it's going to be one of the biggest and most exciting markets in the world. So some of the key takeaways. The only future for commercial printers is to add digital printing capabilities. They can't survive long term with just conventional capabilities. And I don't think many people in this room would disagree that at some point in time, most conventional printers will add a digital workflow of some description to their technology. Otherwise, the future won't look as rosy for them. And the most appropriate solution, we think, is the Indigo, HP Indigo technology because of our close links to the offset process. That's this liquiding, the look and feel, the quality printing on paper, the special color capabilities, the flexibility of substrates, the workflows we talked about in terms of end-to-end solutions being totally complementary to offset printing. And of course, the huge printing expertise of HP behind our technology. A small Indigo of just maybe 2,000 people worldwide, we didn't have a strong voice, but now HP is one of the biggest, most successful organizations in the world with some $80 billion turnover per year. We have a huge amount of respect in that organisation. We're probably one of the biggest and fastest growing sections of the IPG activities, and we're attracting a huge amount of investment. And so we feel very comfortable about our future and our ability to look after those commercial printers that make the transition and to develop our business together moving forward. So don't shut the door when an opportunity presents itself. I just want to leave you with this cartoon, because I think it's quite poignant that we can close our eyes to something that we think could help us, but we're preoccupied with what we're doing at the moment. So, just a point to leave you with. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the very enlightening talk about digital printing, and I'm sure there are a lot of questions. Please don't run away. Keep that mic handy. Some questions are going to come up.
I'll sit.
Yeah.
Can I have the stick back just in case there are any difficult ones?
Use your laser. Cut them up. There are a lot of questions which printers probably have as to what are the challenges that one faces. Maybe some printers here can say what are their apprehensions about digital printing, and we have a very learned panel over here. Mr. Matthias may be able to ask some challenging questions as to what are the things required before you get into digital printing. And maybe you can answer some of them and tell us why and what and how, what should one do?
Well, I think in the 15 years that I've been associated with this business, I've seen and had the responsibility of taking the smallest two-man startup companies that have got very limited resources, very nervous about upsetting the household, they've got children to educate, they've got wives to keep a roof over the head, that make these decisions and don't make them lightly. And from one end of the spectrum of a startup company to the multinational conglomerates, I've been involved in many of these situations. And it was tough in the early days because digital was still a very conceptual process. And it's becoming easier, but over time, printers are more sophisticated. And as the bigger printers present themselves to us, it's not just a question of whether they buy the machine, it's how it fits into their printing processes. I always liken it to the cogs of a wheel. And if you've got to keep your wheel in balance, each of the spokes has to be correctly tensioned. And if you put a new spoke in and you don't tension it or fit it right, then it can throw the wheel out of alignment. And that's the sort of delicacy that we get into now with some of the larger printers. But most printers, from the small to the very large, have similar concerns. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Manoj. Sorry, you have a question? Can you have the mic there, please?
Whoever has the mic can speak.
I have the mic. Can I speak?
Okay, see,
We can hear you.
see, I'm from ITC. Okay, we are the paperboard manufacturers and the substrate suppliers for the printing industry. Okay, I wanted to ask you two questions. One, we were talking in detail about the digital pages printing, the commercial side of the printing. I would like to know what are they for the packaging side of it. Okay, packaging.
Okay.
Packaging is the fastest growing segment in the printing side. And that's one thing. The second question is like, what is the quality of the substrate that HP would recommend for a digital kind of a printing? I mean, do you have any specific parameters and specifications that you laid out for the printing?
Two good questions there. I'll take the first one, which is...
Is it too good or too good?
Two separate questions, and they were very good. The first one is on the packaging. The packaging marketplace, by the way, is probably the silent volcano within the digital printing industry, because it's not that the marketplace is using variable data to grow, it's just that the printing processes are very clumsy. The Flexo marketplace has very high setup costs, and the economies of scale in the label market, for example, are very tight. So we're seeing a lot of packaging or label manufacturers, label converters, moving to digital because it's much easier. Again, they suffer the same run length questions, the same turnaround times, the same change in product specification, and digital printing, now with the special colour capability, enables them to complement the processes that they use today. In terms of substrates, it's true to say that in the packaging environment, the substrates are much, much more varied. You can be printing anything from paper to crackback material to PVCs, for example. And in most cases, those papers need to be primed, if you want, or optimized for the digital printing process. And we've refined that process now to a very fine degree, and it's a very simple process where you pre-condition the substrates, either at source with the manufacturers, because we have a lot of paper substrate suppliers who supply our customers from the shelf, or our companies do that type of work themselves, but we don't limit them to the range of substrates that they wish to choose on, and it's almost endless in that respect. So for us, the volumes are very high in the packaging in terms of numbers of labels, if you want, that are produced, and it's also very high margin business for these label converters. So it's a good industry, and if you specialise in the packaging and media environment, then I'd like to touch base with you, because we are introducing our first packaging-driven presses into India very, very shortly, and we need to partner with the right paper manufacturers.
So are these presses separate presses from the conventional presses?
Completely different. They're web-fed, and they use a slightly different printing process because of the nature of the substrate. It's mainly flexible, so you can't lay down separation after separation, because if the paper moves, registration becomes an issue. So we use a process called one-shot, which builds all the colours up on the blanket, and then in one shot applies the product onto the media in one pass. Which means that we have the ability, and I can't show you, I've got a business card, which uses actually, I think, 12 separations. And we call it reverse printing, sandwich printing, where we have CMYK on a clear substrate on the front, we have an opaque white, and then we print the other colours faced in reverse on the back, and we can read it from both angles. And that's a unique printing capability that's only available through this offset, digital offset process. So from a media point of view, again, there's a lot of compatibility. Just in terms of the quality of paper, the fact that if you look at the size of particle that you use in the liquid ink, whether it be offset printing ink or digital printing ink, the size of the particle is very important, because the more ink you lay down, the chances of you obscuring the quality of the paper become even higher. So the smaller the particle, the more your result tends to follow the relief of the substrate. So if you've got a nice textured substrate and you want a very sexy image on the paper, then offset and digital liquid ink tend to give you the same result. Unfortunately, if you're using a process which lays down a lot of like toner, so if you've got a very high shiny shadow area, then you tend to have 4 or 5 times as much product in that same printing area, which obscures the quality of the paper. So therefore, the paper's not the driving force. They tend to use very limited substrates in that respect. But we would like, our users to use the same substrates and get the same high quality results, because our ink is almost identical to that of conventional.
Okay, another one.
One more question, then we've got maybe.
Yeah, I would like to know about the packaging in terms of thickness of the paper. When you're talking about labels, okay, label, it's part of packaging. I'm talking about the carton kind of an application where the thickness of the paper, it becomes a board, higher thickness in terms of micron thick. Do you have a solution for that kind of a thing?
Yeah, there's two what we call industrial presses. We have the S2000, which is designed to print on what we call more rigid materials. And again, the rigidity of the material tends to restrict your ability to wrap it around a printing cylinder. And because we use an A3 or a fairly small offset footprint, it's normally the trailing edge of the substrate, if it's thicker, that flicks up and basically interferes with the printing process. So we've got the S2000, which doesn't bend the media through the press, so it goes through straight. And it still operates this one-shot process. And the ID card that I've got, which is a super thick, around 600 micron thickness, it doesn't get bent through the substrate, but receives the same high quality, almost perfect registration.
Prints on both sides at the same time?
It prints on one side.
Oh.
Yeah.
The other question I had was, if I'm a conventional printer and I go to digital, is my conventional printing business going to go down?
Good question. In fact, our experience has shown that the complementary fit, if you give your marketing people or your salespeople a different solution, you find that applications that are good for digital printing, for example, actually generate work for your conventional printing press. Now, if I've got a good customer, the chances are he's going to ask me for some bizarre things from time to time, and the chances are I'm not going to want to let him down. So if he asks me to produce 50 of something very quickly, and I've only got a conventional press to produce it, then I'll sacrifice some production efficiency to make sure I meet his demands. If you have this digital compatibility in your system, you're able to do it without interrupting your long runs. And what we've seen is an increase in conventional printing, because you're then freeing up your printing press to be more akin to doing those jobs that are more suitable for that machine, and you free up capacity. And we see an increase in the short run on-demand work because the customers are demanding both. So we see a net result of an increase in work across the whole portfolio.
Freddie, we have an example here of a customer who installed this facility in town.
Just a second, Shilpa.
Sorry, just to add an Indian context. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, carry on.
Who put a 3050 and is using it as proofs. So his sales guys go out and get the jobs and from the customer to proof it on the same day and get back to the site, to the customer. And when they prove it, goes straight into production. So he actually has started another shift on his offset press, just because he's doing his proofs now digitally and can show proofs to his customer very, very quickly.
What happens if the proof doesn't match the final printed result? Are you going to get a problem? And how close is the proof?
It is very close because we're using the same offset pigment inks on our machine. Plus, he's proofing on the same substrate as well that the final job is going to go on. So while you can't get 100%, and I think everybody knows that in this world, you can't match anything 100%. It is very close to, and he's...
So is it better or is it slightly worse? Because if it's better, then you have a problem. If it's slightly worse, the customer...
You're not going to win this argument. You're not going to win this argument, Shilpa.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that, you know, in the packaging environment, we actually downgrade the result so that we match the flex
With
over.
color management.
And in the conventional, we have to what we call footprint or fingerprint our press to match the same dot game characteristics, the same optical.
Screen lines.
Manoj had a question.
I have 3 questions. First one, Steve. On 3050, can we print PP sheets also? Plastic sheets?
Yeah.
Yeah, and paper and plastic both. And,
Okay, that's one question.
Second one, can we do spot coating on HP Indigo? I have seen some spot coated samples, Digitomat or whatever, but that is how that is possible, whether it is some transparent coating or matte or gloss.
Yeah.
And third one is this substrate what we are talking about now. This ITC man has thrown nice question. So is the substrate requires any coating before, because we heard something that in market that it requires some coating before to go on Indigo press. So is correct that some the coating is required before printing on that substrate?
Or grain
or any
direction.
substrate?
Or grain direction.
Yeah, or any substrate, some coating is required before printing on HP Indigo?
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
I'll take the first question. You're not limited on the 3050 to just paper. You can print on artificial materials. We've got some examples here of some great work that's been done by ReproScan on, what's Tyvek? On Tyvek, which is an example of an artificial substrate. We've also got another set of examples where you're printing on almost like a transparency type material. And in most cases, you don't need to coat. But there may be the odd one or two situations where what we call the pH of the paper is slightly different to the way we like it, and it needs to be more alkaline if you want. And the rumours, if you want, of having to coat everything really came from the early days in the US, where the way the paper mills actually produced the paper was not compatible with our printing press. And that was what we call Generation 1 ink. And in fact, I remember in IPEX 1993, when we had a lot of skeptical companies looking at this technology for the first time, saw some basic printing being done, where if they put their finger on it, the ink would come straight off certain substrates with no trace. And of course, that was a fairly big shock for a company like Indigo that had spent billions of dollars and thousands of man-years encountering a media which wasn't compatible with our substrate. So we're now on sort of generation 4 ink. The media that we print on today is basically standard off the shelf. But I would say there's about 10% of media which we encounter from time to time, where if you really need to print on it, and it could be anything, you can optimize it very quickly and very simply yourselves, or you can buy it from source already optimized. So we would say media today is not a restriction. In fact, all the papers that you see outside the front are standard Indian supplied papers with no coating, no pre-treatment, no preconditioning whatsoever. Okay. So you can have absolute confidence that you can print on those media. In terms of this spot coating, I mentioned earlier we introduced this digital matte, which is very recent, very new, and it's a very clear ink which runs through one of the channels. You can run it through your 5th, 6th or 7th channel, which adopts the shape of any separation. So if you want it just to cover a particular area, then that's a separation which you can do. You can vary it the same way that you can vary digital printing. So from page to page, you can have a very unique and very, we think, a very sophisticated look and feel to your finished product, and you can do it variably. In fact, we'll show you some examples if you're particularly interested in that. I would say it's not a protective coating. Okay, so don't treat it as a varnish which will coat and protect the printing. You would need to use conventional methods to do that if you wish to. But it is there as a very nice, very pleasing result. And I think you'll enjoy it. So coating issue, digital matte, and in terms of media, again, I can only say that we have our machines running side by side with conventional presses all over the world, and they use the same substrates. As long as your paper is accurately cut, then you have no problems with positioning or registration in the machine, and it's very forgiving in that. I think that covers all three of your questions. So PVC, yeah, no problem.
Yes, Hemant.
Who has the mic?
So Rosali next.
That's the monopoly. That mic's going to become valuable.
For companies making the transition from commercial print company to digital, how important is marketing? What is the whole mindset of trying to market digital print services? And building a larger customer base. What is your experience been?
In fact, that's probably one of the most important questions, because the fear of engaging this market. You're looking at a marketplace today around the world. Most printing companies are service-driven. They have a set of customers. They tend not to like salespeople, because salespeople come and go, and they tend to take customers with them. And that's one of the sort of, I suppose, reputations that a lot of salespeople have. So most printing companies go on their own reputation, and the owners of those companies tend to represent their customers, and they have key customers, and they have secondary customers. But what's most important is when you're making the decision to move into digital, if you're a dynamic marketing-driven company, you'll look for new innovations and new products to present to the marketplace, and you go out and spend money doing the marketing and doing the research and trying to find business if you want. Or you could be another company which is pretty much based on its own traditional customers and doesn't have new companies introduce themselves from one month to the next, and you have the same companies that you do service for. And I would say that 60% of our installed base look to their existing customers, the people they do business with generally every day, for the first wave, if you want, of revenues for the machine. And they've got the dialogue, they've got the relationship, they know really what their strategies are, and they're the first people that tend to migrate or transform or transition across from conventional to digital. And then what happens is that as capacity grows, those companies tend to introduce new applications. But also, you have the option, if you want to become more proactive in marketing, putting brochures together and so on, then you have that option. But most companies build their business by dealing with the customers they know first. In fact, how many printers here have a brochure? Put your hand up. How many printers here produce a brochure regularly for themselves? So just show me the hands again. 1, 2. A very small percentage, which makes my point. Printing companies aren't proactive in marketing themselves. And to suggest that the only way you can make digital a reality is to go out and become a marketing company overnight is actually not true.
That's because we don't have 5,000 customers
Exactly.
So we need shorter run printers to have it, to print our brochures.
That's right. But it's
Catch
important.
22.
Yeah, it's important to note that most of the printing companies that I see and experience around the world tend to offer better services to the people they know first. But it's important that you have to consider it though in the future, that you've got to be able to market yourselves differently. Because if your customers are, looking at better targeting, being able to get a better return on their investment of marketing, then printers have to do the same thing. And if you're going to talk solutions rather than just static pages, you've got to change your vocabulary with your customers to meet that change. So it's not that clear cut, but you can survive very well by looking after the customers you know best.
Hema, can we have a question?
I have two questions. The one is now, is your press able to do UV coating also?
Is our press able to do UV coating?
Yeah.
Okay.
And secondly, now you are talking about your industrial presses, where the ink is totally taken onto the blanket first and then transferred onto the substrate, whereas in the conventional it is done one after the other. So what is the quality difference between the two? Suppose we are doing a substrate which is possible on both the systems. What is the quality difference? Don't we get a bit of a more smudging on where the ink is being transferred on the blanket first, all the colors, and then transferred on the substrate?
Okay, good question. So the first one is that we don't have a UV coating process today. In fact, the last time we did a blanket research of all our installed base and asked them what things we should be working on, I mean, a lot of our technology is driven by the user groups that we have around the world. They came out with very different requests. They came out with the ability to print spot colors, to increase the range of printing materials that we can produce, to get what we call the duty cycles down on the machine, so that's the reliability and performance of the machines, and the list went on in that capacity. They also mentioned the metallic inks, because if you remember, I don't know if many of you were at Drupa 1995, we introduced a range of metallic golds, metallic silvers, and so on as part of the range, because the marketplace was actually asking for that. And today, we're seeing now more focus around the metallic type products, and we think India again is going to be quite a strong absorber of those products. So I think Drupa 2008, you'll see a reintroduction of metallic-based inks on our machine, but we won't have a UV-based ink today. But we do have an invisible ink, which is very common in the security printing industry, where we have an ink that's only visible under ultraviolet light. And we treat it as the same as a separation. So you can have variable images that are now only printed using this invisible ink and can only be seen under an ultraviolet light. But we don't have a UV varnishing process as such. And part of our finishing solutions have this ability to now UV varnish much, much shorter runs offline or near line to our printing presses. And this quality difference between one shot and our standard printing processes is only different because we can't guarantee in a rigid or flexible environment to be able to lay down the image in the same place on a stock if it moves, if it's compressed, or if it's being produced, sent through the system dynamically, but it doesn't distort in some respect. So the one-shot is purely just a one-shot process of getting ink onto paper. There's no quality difference between doing it the conventional way, that's each separation one over the other, which is purely a registration issue, not an image quality issue.
So what's the next
Question. One more question.
last question, and then we'll take.
I'm going to be available here for a release for the 2 days if you want to
And
speak
there's a
to me.
special discount for customers who book today.
This is B.R. Musare. We are the first people in 1992 for a digital printing in India. My experience with the 7 years with the digital printing, that the very, very important factor in this is the media. And if we want to use the media as per the what is required for the digital printing, we cannot compete in the market with the offsets. You require a certain tall percentage, or technical lot of things are there, tall percentage, moisture, lot of things is required to handle the paper in digital press. How do we compete with the offset? Because if I do have the digital printing, use of costly paper, it cannot be covered in the market with the offset. So any solution or any mills or anywhere in the world whereby we can, because in offset you can handle the paper the way you want. You can't handle the paper in digital press the way you handle in the offsets. Is any solution for that?
Okay. Well, our experience is that a lot of papers are conventional papers, and we've got companies that leverage their buying capabilities and buy huge amounts of substrate very, very economically, and they guillotine them or cut them to size to produce the digital products. I would say also that if you're a conventional printer and you're printing 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 run, because of the economies of scale, you waste a lot of paper. Okay, so as a fraction of the page price, substrate is even 1% or 0.5% shift because of the volume of paper you're using makes a huge difference to the economics of the printing job. And that's why media or substrate suppliers today are often, it's a very aggressively fought business. However, if you're printing in the short run environment, paper is not a big cost. It's not the main factor in producing the job. So we've seen people produce more on more expensive substrates because they choose to, because they want a particular look and feel. But if you're printing 500 or 1,000 or 2,000, the paper cost doesn't tend to be the limiting factor. But if you're printing 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, and you had the same scenario, then it would be a factor. But based on the run lengths today, and based on your ability to swap between conventional papers and some digitally optimized papers, we've not seen media as an economic area just yet.
No, Mr. Steve, if you see that I had just printed for this seminar only the booklet for the participants. If I use the any Indian paper, I cannot reproduce the quality what I reproduce on this paper. You see the smoothness on this paper, and there is a gray scale and everything is there. If I use the any Indian paper, I cannot reproduce this quality.
You can't reproduce this on what?
On whatever the local paper is available. And if I have to use this kind of paper, it's very, very costly.
Yeah.
So that is my question. We are facing my 7 years experience. Digital printing, yes, there is a lot of advantage, but the major factor is the media.
So what printing device do you use today?
We have a Docutic 135.
Right, so you're using the zero
And
graphic
26.
process. Right. Now, one of the things I'd like everybody to understand is that the zero graphic process is a different printing process to offset. Okay? You're using a lot of toner or silicon-based fusing at very high temperatures to fuse the image to the media. You're also using a huge amount of product for any one printing area. So you combine the very high temperatures with the type of media you need so that you can control dust contamination, you can get the image transfer or the toner transfer efficiency you want. You have to do that in a very narrow media window because of just the printing process itself. And I know that the toner-based manufacturers work very, very hard to introduce new media into their portfolio to enable their users to be more flexible on substrate. But it costs a lot of money, a huge amount of money. And Xerox will basically guarantee the performance of their machines as long as you use the medias that they've tested. And they're very strict about that because their service and duty cycles shift dramatically if you try and print on anything that falls outside of that. And I would just very much like to just differentiate that we use a liquid ink offset process that doesn't heat the substrate, which enables you to print on almost any media without the worry of the moisture content having a huge impact on the result, having the silicon which has a way of giving an artificial gloss if you want, which is a battle the zero graphic process is going to have forever and a day. And I'm really comforting myself to say that we don't have those problems. And so I can understand your point of view that media is a big issue, and it is a big issue for the zero graphic process, and it will be today for a long time. But it's a good question. But the digital printing, and I suggest if you haven't had a chance to look at one of our users, and I'm sure you'll meet some here today and tomorrow, go and have a look, see how they produce, see what sort of processes they use in order to really optimize the media. Media is not a question for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. I think we've had a very interesting session. Before we wrap up for a quick tea and coffee and get into our next session, I'd like to call our president, Mr. Kamal Tibriwala, to give a Kamal. Give a token of appreciation to Steve from all of us in the BMPA. I would also call upon Vimal Mehta to give a small token of appreciation to Shilpa, who helped this conference happen. Shilpa, surprise, surprise. Everybody, big hand to Shilpa. So we'll break for a quick tea break. I hope we have all got watches on, and it'll be exactly 10 minutes. And so please have your tea, coffee, and come back soon. Thank you very much.